Imagine this. You're stripped of everything that defines you, your freedom, your dignity, your identity. You're cast into a barren, desolate landscape, surrounded by strangers, many of whom are hardened criminals. Every day, you face the same crushing monotony, the same harsh conditions, the same gnawing question: what's left of me? This was Fyodor Dostoevsky's reality when he was sent to a Siberian labor camp in 1849, condemned for his involvement in a radical intellectual group. He faced not only physical hardship, but the kind of psychological torment that breaks most men. And yet, Dostoevsky emerged from this crucible transformed, not shattered, but reborn. He called his release from prison a resurrection. And it wasn't just a return to freedom. It was the birth of a new philosophy, one that would come to define his life and his work. The belief that suffering is not the end but a beginning. In today's video, we'll explore Dostoevsky's philosophy of resurrection, the idea that through suffering, we can find redemption and transformation. This isn't a feel-good story about pain magically leading to happiness. No, Dostoevsky's insights are far more profound. He doesn't glorify suffering, but he does insist that it holds the potential to strip away illusions, to test the depths of our character, and to force us to confront truths we might otherwise avoid. Why does suffering have such transformative power? What can we learn from Dostoevsky's time in Siberia that applies to our lives today? And how can we embrace his hard-earned wisdom to find meaning in our own struggles? These are not easy questions, but they're the kind of questions Dostoevsky compels us to ask. Through the lens of his semi-autobiographical novel, The House of the Dead, we'll journey into the heart of human despair and emerge with a new understanding of hope, resilience, and the capacity for redemption. We'll meet prisoners who embody the best and worst of humanity, and we'll see how even in the darkest places, small acts of kindness can light the way to salvation. We'll also confront our own assumptions about pain and growth, challenging the modern obsession with comfort and ease. Stay with me as we uncover why Dostoevsky believed that the path to true freedom and enlightenment often begins where we least expect it, in the depths of suffering. By the end of this video, you might find yourself looking at your own hardships in a completely new light. Fyodor Dostoevsky's exploration of suffering is deeply rooted in his personal experience, particularly his years in a Siberian labor camp. His semi-autobiographical novel, The House of the Dead, offers a raw and unflinching look at the nature of suffering, freedom, power, and hope. This work transcends its historical setting, delving into themes that remain profoundly relevant to human existence. At the heart of Dostoevsky's observations is the idea that suffering strips life down to its barest essentials. It forces individuals to confront their humanity in ways they might otherwise avoid. In The House of the Dead, the protagonist Alexander Petrovich, a fictionalized version of Dostoevsky, arrives at a Siberian prison where freedom is not only physically taken but psychologically eroded. The shackles, the loss of autonomy, and the regimented routine transform the prisoners into shadows of their former selves. Yet, amidst this dehumanization, a spark of resilience remains. Dostoevsky shows that the deprivation of freedom often compels individuals to find meaning in the smallest acts of defiance or community. Prisoners save for months to smuggle vodka, risking severe punishment for a brief moment of intoxicated autonomy. This act, seemingly self-destructive, is a profound assertion of agency, a refusal to surrender entirely to the oppressive system. Similarly, moments of camaraderie, such as shared laughter or collaborative efforts to stage a performance, restore a semblance of humanity. This reflection on freedom resonates beyond the prison walls. In modern life, freedom is often taken for granted until it is threatened, whether through illness, societal constraints, or personal hardships. The loss of autonomy forces people to confront their inner strength. A modern parallel might be the experience of quarantine during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many faced a sudden loss of movement, routine, and connection. Yet, some found solace in small acts of creativity, resilience, or mutual aid. Echoing Dostoevsky's observations of prisoners finding humanity in unlikely places, the theme of power in The House of the Dead is equally illuminating. Dostoevsky's portrayal of the prison's authority figures reveals how absolute power corrupts and dehumanizes. The Major, a man with near total control over the inmates, wields his authority with cruelty and caprice. His punishments are often arbitrary, designed to reinforce his dominance rather than uphold justice. Dostoevsky captures this dynamic with chilling precision, noting how the Major's power feeds his insecurities and amplifies his pettiness. This is not unique to Dostoevsky's era. The abuse of authority remains a pressing issue in contemporary institutions, from corporate hierarchies to law enforcement. Conversely, Dostoevsky juxtaposes this with the concept of inner power. One of the most striking figures in the novel is a Polish prisoner who, despite enduring relentless punishment, remains unbroken. His quiet dignity unsettles even the most brutal guards. This distinction between external and internal power is a recurring motif in Dostoevsky's work. While external power is often fleeting and corruptive, inner strength, rooted in conviction and self-respect, endures. In modern contexts, this dichotomy can be observed in leadership. Leaders who rely on coercion or intimidation may achieve temporary control but often lose respect and loyalty. In contrast, those who lead with integrity and empathy inspire genuine commitment. This echoes the enduring power of inner strength over external force, a lesson Dostoevsky learned through his own trials. Dostoevsky's reflections on hope are among the most profound in The House of the Dead. He illustrates that hope, even when irrational, is essential to human survival. For the prisoners, hope takes many forms: anticipation of release, the possibility of better conditions, or faith in a higher power. One poignant example is a devout older prisoner who weeps at night but draws strength from his faith, enabling him to endure with grace. His hope is not tied to specific outcomes but is a deeper, existential belief in the value of life itself. In contrast, those who lose hope often descend into despair and self-destruction. Dostoevsky describes prisoners who, cut off from hope, become consumed by bitterness, withdrawing from humanity and sinking into apathy. This psychological dynamic is universal. In modern times, the loss of hope can manifest in burnout, depression, or destructive behavior. Yet, Dostoevsky's portrayal of hope as a lifeline offers a counterpoint, suggesting that even in the direst circumstances, finding a source of meaning, however small, can sustain us. Hope is not merely a passive state. It often requires cultivation. In the novel, the prisoner's Christmas performance becomes a powerful symbol of collective hope. For a brief moment, the harsh realities of prison life fade as inmates laugh, cheer, and connect. This act of creation, though fleeting, affirms their humanity. Similarly, in our own lives, acts of creativity, connection, or service can rekindle hope even in challenging times. Perhaps Dostoevsky's most radical insight is his belief in the duality of human nature, the capacity for both immense cruelty and profound goodness. In The House of the Dead, this duality is embodied by characters who oscillate between extremes. Petro, a loyal companion to Petrovich, is both kind and terrifyingly violent. Aristov, a cruel informant, is pitiable in his emptiness. These characters remind us that good and evil are not fixed traits but potentials within all of us, shaped by circumstances and choices. Dostoevsky's experiences in Siberia affirmed his belief in humanity's resilience. He witnessed unimaginable cruelty, but also acts of kindness and solidarity that defied the harsh conditions. This observation has contemporary relevance. In times of crisis, such as natural disasters or social upheavals, we see both the best and worst of humanity. Individuals rise to extraordinary acts of courage and compassion, while others exploit the vulnerable. This duality challenges us to reflect on our own potential for good or harm. Ultimately, Dostoevsky's philosophy is one of redemption. He believed that suffering, while painful, could lead to profound transformation. This idea is central to his later works, where characters often undergo journeys of redemption through hardship. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov's suffering leads him to humility and repentance. In The Brothers Karamazov, Alyosha's trials deepen his faith and compassion. These stories echo Dostoevsky's own journey from a condemned man to one of literature's greatest moral philosophers. In The House of the Dead, Dostoevsky does not shy away from the harsh realities of prison life, but he also offers a vision of hope and humanity's potential for growth. His insights into freedom, power, hope, and the duality of human nature are not confined to 19th century Russia. They speak to universal truths about the human condition, reminding us that even in the darkest moments, there is a path to redemption. This path requires courage, resilience, and a belief in the enduring spark of humanity, a belief that Dostoevsky carried with him long after he left Siberia. Dostoevsky's exploration of freedom in The House of the Dead is deeply rooted in the primal human need for autonomy and agency. The Siberian prison camp, where every aspect of life is regimented and controlled, serves as a stark backdrop for this inquiry. Through his protagonist, Alexander Petrovich, Dostoevsky illustrates how the deprivation of freedom reshapes the human psyche, often leading to profound despair or unexpected resilience. The chains on the prisoner's legs symbolize more than physical restraint. They are a constant reminder of the loss of self-determination, a fundamental aspect of what it means to be human. Petrovich's arrival at the prison is marked by dehumanizing rituals designed to strip prisoners of their individuality. Every action, from being assigned a number to wearing the same course uniform, reinforces their reduced status. These mechanisms mirror how modern institutions, like schools or corporations, can erode personal identity by prioritizing conformity. The monotony of prison life, where days blur together in an endless cycle, becomes a psychological prison in itself. This sameness is not unlike the repetition many experience in daily routines, where work weeks bleed into one another, leaving little room for spontaneity or self-expression. Prisoners develop coping mechanisms to survive the absence of freedom. One of the most striking is their ritualistic drinking binges. Vodka, smuggled into the camp at great personal risk, becomes more than an intoxicant. It is a declaration of defiance. Prisoners save for months to afford these fleeting moments of rebellion, during which they break the rules, assert their agency, and remind themselves of their humanity. The act of drinking, though seemingly destructive, is an act of resistance. It highlights the lengths to which people will go to feel even a semblance of control in oppressive conditions. This dynamic is evident today in how individuals find solace in seemingly trivial acts of rebellion, like breaking diets, skipping work, or defying social norms to assert their autonomy. Not all prisoners channel their yearning for freedom constructively. Some lash out violently, attacking guards or fellow inmates, fully aware of the severe consequences. Dostoevsky likens these outbursts to a tiger cornered and desperate. These acts, far from being irrational, underscore a deeper psychological truth. The human spirit can endure much, but total submission corrodes the soul. When pushed to the brink, even the most compliant individual may explode in defiance, regardless of the repercussions. This mirrors instances in modern workplaces where employees, after enduring years of micromanagement or toxic leadership, abruptly quit or sabotage projects. These actions are less about achieving tangible change and more about reclaiming a sense of self. Amid this landscape of rebellion and despair, Dostoevsky introduces Akim Akimik, a prisoner who seems immune to the psychological toll of confinement. Akimik accepts the prison's rigid structure without resistance, finding peace in routine and obedience. To some, his compliance might appear enviable, a way to escape the torment of rebellion. However, Petrovich finds Akimik unsettling, describing him as a man who has sacrificed his humanity for tranquility. This character raises questions about the cost of adaptation. Can one truly be free if they have surrendered their individuality, even if it brings peace? This dilemma resonates today in debates about trade-offs between security and freedom, particularly in the digital age where privacy is often exchanged for convenience. Dostoevsky's reflections on freedom extend beyond the confines of the prison camp, offering insights into modern life. In today's world, freedom is often compromised not by physical chains, but by invisible forces that dictate our choices. Social media algorithms, for example, subtly shape what we see, read, and believe, creating echo chambers that confine our thinking. Many people unknowingly surrender their agency to these systems, much like prisoners who adapt to the monotony of incarceration. Breaking free requires conscious effort, curating diverse perspectives, questioning assumptions, and reclaiming control over one's digital environment. The modern workplace also echoes the dynamics of the Siberian prison. The relentless pursuit of productivity often leaves little room for personal autonomy. Employees find themselves trapped in rigid hierarchies, bound by schedules and performance metrics that dictate their lives. Like Dostoevsky's prisoners, they seek solace in small acts of rebellion, taking extended breaks, quiet quitting, or engaging in creative side projects. These actions, while minor, are attempts to assert individuality in a system designed for conformity. The parallels between Dostoevsky's observations and contemporary life highlight the enduring relevance of his work. Freedom, as he presents it, is not merely the absence of physical restraints, but the presence of choice and agency. In a world where external forces constantly seek to confine us, whether through societal expectations, technological manipulation, or institutional structures, the question of how to reclaim our freedom becomes ever more pressing. Dostoevsky's exploration of freedom is ultimately a call to action. It challenges us to examine the ways we might unknowingly surrender our agency and to find ways to resist, whether through small acts of defiance, creative expression, or meaningful connections with others. The pursuit of freedom remains central to the human experience. In this pursuit, Dostoevsky's insights offer both a warning and a guide, urging us to value and protect our liberty in all its forms. In The House of the Dead, Dostoevsky lays bare the corrupting nature of power and its destructive impact on both those who wield it and those who are subjected to it. His insights into authority are deeply rooted in his own observations from his time in a Siberian labor camp, where the dynamics of control and subjugation played out with brutal clarity. Power, he shows, is not only a tool for maintaining order, but also a temptation that reveals the darkest aspects of human nature. The major who oversees the prison exemplifies the worst excesses of unchecked authority. He is described as petty and spiteful, a man who wields his near absolute power not with justice or wisdom, but with cruelty born of insecurity. His punishments are arbitrary and often disproportionate to the perceived infractions, beatings for minor mistakes, verbal degradation for imagined slights. This need to assert dominance is not a sign of strength, but a symptom of his inner weakness. Dostoevsky captures this dynamic succinctly, noting that the major ruled with an iron fist, yet within himself, he was weak and insignificant. His tyranny stems from a void within, a lack of self-respect, and a desperate need to assert control as a way of masking his inadequacies. Dostoevsky's portrayal of the major speaks to a broader observation about the nature of power itself. Power, he suggests, is inherently corrupting. In one of the novel's most incisive lines, he writes, "Tyranny is a habit, and it can stupefy the very best of men." This idea extends beyond the major to the guards, many of whom begin their roles as ordinary individuals, but gradually become desensitized to the suffering they inflict. One lieutenant, for example, turns flogging into an art form, deriving satisfaction from psychologically tormenting prisoners before delivering physical punishment. Another guard interprets a prisoner's silence during a beating as a personal affront, reacting with increased cruelty to reassert his dominance. These men are not sadists by nature. Their brutality emerges from their roles and the unchecked power they hold. The transformation of ordinary men into tyrants under Dostoevsky's belief that power does not simply reveal character, it shapes it. The guards' actions are not driven by necessity or a desire for justice, but by a need to affirm their own superiority. This dynamic is not limited to the prison. It is a universal truth about authority. Dostoevsky later explores similar themes in his other works, such as Crime and Punishment and The Brothers Karamazov, where characters who gain power often use it to dominate rather than serve. Amidst this bleak depiction of external power, Dostoevsky offers a contrasting vision of inner power, which he presents as enduring and uncorruptible. This inner power is embodied by a Polish prisoner referred to only as Z, Despite enduring relentless punishment, Z remains unbroken. His quiet dignity and unwavering faith stand in stark contrast to the external power wielded by the Major and his guards. In one pivotal scene, the Major beats Z in a fit of rage, but Z does not flinch or cry out. Instead, he accepts the punishment with serene composure, leaving the Major visibly shaken. This moment highlights Dostoevsky's belief that true strength comes not from dominating others, but from self-respect, conviction, and an unshakable sense of purpose. Z's inner power is not just a personal triumph. It is a challenge to the very foundation of the Major's authority. While the Major's power is derived from external sources, his position, his uniform, his ability to inflict pain, it is ultimately fragile. When stripped of these trappings, he is revealed as weak and insignificant. In contrast, Z's strength is internal and therefore indomitable. This distinction between outer and inner power is a recurring theme in Dostoevsky's work, reflecting his belief that the true measure of a person lies in their inner resilience, not their external status. Dostoevsky's critique of power extends far beyond the confines of the Siberian prison, offering profound insights into the nature of authority in all its forms. Consider the dynamics of modern institutions, where power often operates in similarly corrupting ways. Leaders who begin with noble intentions can be seduced by the privileges of their positions, gradually prioritizing their own authority over the well-being of those they serve. Scandals of abuse in corporate hierarchies, religious organizations, and governments are not anomalies. They are the inevitable result of systems that concentrate power without accountability. On a smaller scale, the corrupting influence of power can be seen in everyday relationships. A manager who micromanages their team, a teacher who belittles their students, or a parent who imposes their will on their child often acts not out of malice but from insecurity, a need to assert control in the face of their own fears and inadequacies. These individuals, like the Major, use power to mask their vulnerabilities, often at the expense of those they are supposed to support or nurture. Dostoevsky's observations also raise important questions about how we wield power in our own lives. Do we use it to uplift others, or do we succumb to the temptation to dominate? The answer often lies in our ability to cultivate inner strength. Those who derive their sense of self-worth from external validation, whether through titles, possessions, or the subjugation of others, are more likely to abuse power. In contrast, individuals with a strong sense of inner purpose and self-respect are better equipped to use power responsibly, viewing it as a tool for service rather than self-aggrandizement. The tension between external and internal power is not merely a philosophical concept. It has practical implications for how we structure our institutions and relationships. Systems that emphasize accountability, transparency, and shared authority are less likely to breed tyranny. On a personal level, cultivating inner resilience through practices like self-reflection, empathy, and a commitment to ethical principles can help prevent the corrupting effects of power. Dostoevsky's exploration of power in The House of the Dead is ultimately a cautionary tale. It reveals how easily authority can be twisted into a tool for oppression and how essential it is to balance external power with internal strength. His insights challenge us to reflect on our own relationship with power, urging us to wield it with humility and a sense of responsibility. In a world where authority is often abused, Dostoevsky's vision of inner power as a counterbalance to external domination remains as relevant as ever. Dostoevsky's exploration of hope in The House of the Dead is an intricate tapestry woven with the threads of human suffering, resilience, and redemption. Hope, for him, was not an abstract concept but a tangible force that kept life moving forward in the darkest of times. Through his experiences in a Siberian labor camp, he observed the multifaceted nature of hope and how it manifested among prisoners who had little else to hold on to. It became clear to Dostoevsky that hope was not just a source of comfort but a fundamental necessity for survival. The prisoners in Siberia clung to hope in myriad ways. Some focused on intentional hope's tangible, specific outcomes they longed for. For many, this meant dreaming of release, however distant or improbable it seemed. Others placed their hopes in smaller, more immediate pleasures, a rare meal that broke the monotony of prison gruel, or the chance to hear news from the outside world. These intentional hopes often served as lifelines, giving prisoners a reason to endure another day. They were fragile and sometimes illusory, but they were essential. Beyond these immediate hopes, Dostoevsky observed what might be called basal hope, a deeper, existential conviction that life itself was worth living, regardless of circumstance. This form of hope was less about specific outcomes and more about maintaining faith in the inherent value of existence. For some prisoners, this faith was tied to religion, a profound source of solace that allowed them to find meaning in suffering. Religious prisoners turned to their faith not as an escape from reality, but as a way to confront it with courage. Their prayers, rituals, and meditations anchored them, reminding them that their suffering was not in vain and that there was something greater than their present anguish. The dichotomy between intentional and basal hope became particularly evident in moments of crisis. Dostoevsky describes how prisoners who lost all hope, both intentional and basal, were often reduced to hollow shells of their former selves. One particularly haunting example is a man who, after committing an especially heinous crime, spiraled into despair. He tried to embrace his own wickedness as a form of rebellion, but this only deepened his isolation. Without hope to sustain him, he became what Dostoevsky called a sniveling, abject creature, cut off from humanity and himself. This is not an isolated case. The absence of hope consistently led to dehumanization, both in Dostoevsky's observations and in his later works. In Crime and Punishment, for example, Raskolnikov's journey from despair to redemption hinges on his ability to rediscover hope. His initial nihilism leads him to believe that life is meaningless, a perspective that justifies his moral transgressions. Yet, through suffering and the influence of Sonia's unwavering faith, he begins to see that even a broken life can hold meaning. Similarly, in The Brothers Karamazov, Alyosha represents the transformative power of hope, serving as a beacon for others to recognize their inherent dignity and worth. Dostoevsky's recurring use of hope as a redemptive force underscores its centrality to his philosophy. In the grim environment of the Siberian prison, moments of hope often sparked profound transformations. Dostoevsky recounts one such instance during a Christmas performance organized by the prisoners. For weeks, they poured their energy into preparations, crafting costumes, rehearsing lines, and building anticipation. When the day finally arrived, the performance transcended the bleakness of their surroundings. Hardened criminals cheered, laughed, and clapped with genuine joy, their usual cynicism temporarily replaced by a sense of community and celebration. In that fleeting moment, the prison ceased to be a place of despair and became a space where humanity could flourish. However briefly, Dostoevsky observed similar transformations during religious ceremonies, particularly at Easter. Even the most defiant prisoners, who otherwise scoffed at faith, showed signs of repentance and humility during these sacred events. In the presence of something greater than themselves, they remembered their humanity and the possibility of redemption. These moments, though rare and fleeting, reinforced Dostoevsky's belief that hope could survive even in the most desolate conditions. The fragility of hope, however, was always apparent. While some prisoners found ways to nurture it, others saw it crumble under the weight of their suffering. This fragility is not unique to Dostoevsky's time. It is a universal aspect of the human experience. In modern life, the absence of hope often manifests as burnout, depression, or destructive behavior. Whether it's a student overwhelmed by academic pressures, a worker trapped in an unfulfilling job, or someone grappling with personal loss, the loss of hope can lead to a profound sense of isolation and despair. Yet, Dostoevsky's reflections offer a counterpoint to this bleak reality. He shows that hope is not something we passively receive, but something we actively cultivate. The prisoners who thrived emotionally and spiritually in Siberia were those who found ways to create meaning, whether through faith, art, or acts of kindness. Even in the harshest conditions, they sought out connections with others, pursued small joys, and refused to let their circumstances define them entirely. This lesson is particularly relevant today, In a world grappling with economic uncertainty, political polarization, and environmental crises, in the face of overwhelming challenges, intentional hopes such as career success or material comfort often prove insufficient. Instead, Dostoevsky's concept of basal hope offers a powerful alternative, the idea that life itself has intrinsic value, and that even in the darkest times, there is meaning to be found. This is not a naive optimism, but a hard-earned belief, forged in the crucible of suffering. One modern parallel can be found in the resilience of communities during natural disasters. In the aftermath of hurricanes, earthquakes, or wildfires, survivors often come together to rebuild not only their physical surroundings, but also their sense of purpose and connection. These acts of solidarity echo the transformative moments Dostoevsky witnessed in prison, where communal efforts like the Christmas performance became beacons of hope in an otherwise bleak landscape. Another example is the role of creativity in sustaining hope. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many turned to art, music, and storytelling as ways to process their experiences and maintain a sense of agency. This mirrors the prisoners' efforts to create meaning through small acts of rebellion or community. Whether it's painting a picture, writing a poem, or simply sharing a story, these creative acts reaffirm the value of life and the potential for renewal. Dostoevsky's ultimate insight is that hope is not contingent on external circumstances but arises from within. It is a choice to believe in the possibility of change, growth, and redemption, even when the odds seem insurmountable. This choice requires courage and resilience, but it also offers profound rewards. In the darkest moments, hope becomes a light that guides us back to ourselves, reminding us of our capacity for love, compassion, and perseverance. Through his experiences in Siberia, Dostoevsky discovered that hope is not just a lifeline, it is the essence of what makes us human. Dostoevsky's exploration of the human soul in The House of the Dead is a profound meditation on our dual potential for both good and evil. Through his vivid portrayal of life in a Siberian prison camp, he delves into the extremes of human behavior, showing how circumstances can bring out the best and worst in people. His time in this harsh environment was a crucible for these insights, allowing him to witness firsthand how individuals navigate the moral spectrum under conditions of extreme duress. In The House of the Dead, Dostoevsky populates his narrative with characters who represent the full breadth of human nature. Aristov, for example, is an informant who betrays his fellow prisoners to curry favor with the authorities. His actions make him universally despised, but Dostoevsky does not render him as a simple villain. Instead, Aristov is pitiable in his emptiness. His ambition for power and recognition stems from an inner void, a lack of purpose that leaves him hollow and desperate for validation. This complexity transforms Aristov from a caricature into a deeply flawed human being, highlighting Dostoevsky's belief that even the worst actions often arise from profound internal struggles. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the Polish prisoner Z, whose dignity and resilience serve as a beacon of hope. Despite enduring relentless punishment and the challenges of old age, Z remains unbroken. His quiet strength inspires respect even from those who wield power over him, illustrating Dostoevsky's conviction that the human spirit can endure unimaginable suffering. Z is a testament to the idea that true strength lies not in physical power or dominance, but in unwavering moral integrity. Yet the most fascinating characters in Dostoevsky's work are those who embody both extremes of human nature. Petro, a loyal companion to the protagonist, is one such figure. He is deeply inquisitive, eager to learn about history and ideas, and capable of profound acts of kindness. At the same time, he is terrifyingly violent, feared by nearly everyone in the prison. This duality reflects Dostoevsky's core belief that every person carries within them the seeds of both good and evil. Circumstances may amplify one aspect over the other, but the potential for both always exists. Dostoevsky's time in Siberia reinforced his belief that human behavior is profoundly shaped by the environment. The harsh conditions of the prison often hardened even the kindest souls, while those with cruel tendencies became monstrous. Alev, a notorious bandit, exemplifies this dynamic. He is a man capable of unspeakable crimes. Yet he operates according to a code of honor that even his enemies respect. Conversely, the prison guards, who are ostensibly there to enforce order, frequently indulge in acts of cruelty that surpass the prisoner's own transgressions. Their brutality is not born of necessity but of the corrupting influence of power, a theme Dostoevsky explores repeatedly throughout his works. This interplay between environment and character raises one of Dostoevsky's central philosophical questions. Are humans inherently good or evil? Or are we shaped by the circumstances in which we find ourselves? His observations in prison suggest a nuanced answer. While the environment exerts a powerful influence, it does not determine our fate. Even in the darkest places, the spark of humanity can endure, offering glimpses of kindness and nobility amid cruelty and despair. The relevance of these observations extends far beyond Dostoevsky's time. In the modern world, we see similar extremes of human behavior, often amplified by technology and social structures. Social media, for instance, provides a stark example of how anonymity can bring out the worst in people. Under the cover of invisibility, individuals who might otherwise act with kindness or neutrality become trolls, reveling in cruelty and divisiveness. Yet these same platforms also enable incredible acts of generosity and solidarity, such as crowdfunding for those in need or organizing global movements for justice. This dual potential mirrors the dynamic Dostoevsky observed in the prison camp, where the same individuals capable of brutality could also exhibit remarkable compassion. The workplace is another modern environment that reflects Dostoevsky's insights. Toxic work cultures, much like the prison, can foster resentment, competition, and burnout, pushing individuals towards self-serving or harmful behavior. Conversely, supportive and inclusive workplaces can bring out the best in employees, encouraging collaboration, creativity, and empathy. Dostoevsky's exploration of the environment's role in shaping behavior challenges us to reflect on the spaces we create and inhabit. Do they nurture the best in us, or do they enable the worst? One of Dostoevsky's most profound observations in The House of the Dead is the potential for redemption, even in the most hardened individuals. He recounts an Easter service in the prison where inmates, many of whom had committed heinous crimes, momentarily shed their cynicism and embraced a sense of humility and community. In that sacred space, they were reminded of their shared humanity. They prayed, sang, and reflected on their lives, experiencing what Dostoevsky describes as a fleeting but genuine transformation. This moment underscores his belief that no soul is beyond saving, a theme that resonates deeply throughout his body of work. Dostoevsky's characters often undergo similar transformations, moving from despair to redemption. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov's journey hinges on his ability to confront his guilt and rediscover his humanity. Sonia's unwavering compassion serves as a catalyst for his redemption, reminding him that even the most broken lives can be mended. In The Brothers Karamazov, Alyosha embodies the potential for goodness, acting as a guide for others to see the light within themselves. These stories echo Dostoevsky's conviction that while suffering and evil are unavoidable, they are not insurmountable. Redemption is always possible, provided there is a willingness to confront one's flaws and strive for change. By the end of The House of the Dead, Dostoevsky leaves readers with a haunting question. What do we do with humanity's dual potential? How do we reconcile our capacity for incredible good and unfathomable evil? For Dostoevsky, the answer lies in choice. While we cannot control all the circumstances of our lives, we can choose how we respond to them. In the face of suffering, we can become bitter and cruel, or we can find meaning and grow. This choice, he believed, is what defines us as human beings. Dostoevsky's exploration of humanity's dual potential is not merely a literary exercise, it is a call to action. It challenges us to look within ourselves and recognize both the light and the darkness that coexist in our souls. It urges us to create environments that foster compassion and empathy, while also confronting the systems and structures that enable cruelty and indifference. Above all, it reminds us that redemption is always within reach, no matter how far we have fallen. Through his experiences in Siberia, Dostoevsky discovered that even in the harshest conditions, the human spirit is capable of extraordinary resilience and transformation, a lesson that continues to resonate today. Dostoevsky's philosophy of resurrection, as expressed in The House of the Dead, centers on the transformative power of suffering. This idea was not born out of theoretical musings, but from the crucible of his own life experiences, particularly his years in a Siberian labor camp. Suffering, for Dostoevsky, was both a trial and a teacher of force that could strip away illusions, reveal profound truths, and ultimately lead to redemption. His insights, forged in the harshest of conditions, remain deeply resonant in exploring the human condition and the paths to growth and renewal. In The House of the Dead, Dostoevsky presents suffering as a paradoxical force. On the one hand, it has the power to dehumanize, crush the spirit, and drive people to despair. The prison environment is rife with examples of this, as inmates endure brutal conditions, the loss of autonomy, and the constant threat of punishment. Yet, on the other hand, Dostoevsky insists that suffering can also elevate, serving as a crucible that purifies the soul and reveals the resilience of the human spirit. It is in this tension that Dostoevsky finds the profound truth of suffering. It is not inherently good or bad, but it is transformative. The protagonist, Alexander Petrovich, embodies this transformative potential. Stripped of his freedom, dignity, and previous life, he is forced to confront his humanity in ways he never could before. Through his time in the labor camp, he begins to see the world through new eyes, recognizing the value of small acts of kindness and the indomitable resilience of those around him. This mirrors Dostoevsky's own experience, as he emerged from his imprisonment not merely as the man he had been, but as someone profoundly changed, stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. One of the most striking elements of Dostoevsky's philosophy is his emphasis on the role of choice in responding to suffering. While we may not control the circumstances of our pain, we can choose how we respond to it. This idea is central to many of his works. In Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov's suffering forces him to confront his arrogance and guilt, ultimately leading him to humility and redemption. Similarly, in The Brothers Karamazov, Alyosha's trials test his faith but also deepen it, allowing him to become a source of hope and guidance for others. These narratives honor Dostoevsky's belief that suffering, when met with courage and introspection, can be a pathway to growth and self-discovery. Dostoevsky's stories often feature moments of redemption that arise from small, seemingly mundane acts of kindness. In The House of the Dead, he recounts the story of a prisoner who, despite being ostracized by his peers and haunted by his past, finds solace and transformation through caring for a sick fellow inmate. This simple act of compassion rekindles a sense of purpose within him, showing that even in the darkest conditions, redemption is possible. These moments are not isolated. They are threads that connect many of Dostoevsky's works, from Sonia's unwavering support in Crime and Punishment to the elder Zosima's teachings in The Brothers Karamazov. Redemption, for Dostoevsky, is not a sudden event but a gradual, often painful process that requires effort, humility, and a willingness to change. The idea of resurrection through suffering extends beyond individual transformation to encompass a vision of universal brotherhood. Dostoevsky believed that humanity's capacity for love and compassion could overcome even the deepest divisions. This belief is poignantly expressed in his final public address, the Pushkin speech, where he articulated his hope for a world united by shared understanding and empathy. While this vision may seem idealistic, it is grounded in the hard-earned wisdom of someone who had seen both the best and worst of humanity. Dostoevsky's time in prison convinced him that even in the most dehumanizing conditions, the spark of divinity remains within each person, a spark that, with the right conditions, can ignite into a flame of hope and love. In today's world, Dostoevsky's insights challenge us to reconsider the role of suffering in our lives. Modern society often prioritizes comfort, efficiency, and the avoidance of pain, viewing suffering as something to be eliminated rather than embraced. Yet Dostoevsky's philosophy suggests that hardship, while painful, can also be a source of growth and renewal. Consider the stories of individuals who have faced immense adversity: a survivor of a natural disaster who rebuilds their community, a refugee who starts anew in an unfamiliar country, or someone who turns personal loss into a source of inspiration for others. These stories echo Dostoevsky's belief that suffering, when approached with resilience and purpose, can lead to profound transformation. At a societal level, Dostoevsky's philosophy urges us to view crises not as insurmountable obstacles, but as opportunities for renewal. This perspective is particularly relevant in addressing systemic injustices or global challenges like climate change. While these issues often involve significant suffering, they also present opportunities to forge deeper connections, reimagine societal structures, and build a more compassionate and equitable world. Dostoevsky's vision reminds us that shared struggle can be a powerful force for unity and progress. In The House of the Dead, Dostoevsky reflects on the lives wasted within the prison walls, the youth buried, the talents squandered, the potential unrealized. Yet, he also acknowledges the resilience, hope, and sparks of divinity that endure even in the most dehumanizing conditions. This duality captures the essence of Dostoevsky's philosophy. Suffering is inevitable, but it is not meaningless. It is through confronting pain, loss, and despair that we discover the depths of our humanity and the heights of our potential. Dostoevsky's philosophy of resurrection ultimately challenges us to rethink our relationship with suffering, rather than viewing it as a purely negative force. He invites us to see it as a crucible for growth, a means of stripping away illusions and revealing deeper truths about ourselves and the world. This perspective does not glorify pain but acknowledges its transformative potential, offering a path to redemption and renewal. The enduring legacy of Dostoevsky's philosophy lies in its ability to inspire both individuals and societies to find meaning in suffering, whether through personal trials or collective struggles. His insights remind us that even in the darkest moments, there is a path to resurrection, a path that leads to greater understanding, compassion, and connection. Through his works, Dostoevsky continues to illuminate this path, offering a profound and timeless exploration of what it means to be human. Dostoevsky's philosophy of resurrection is not an easy truth to accept. It asks us to look at suffering, the very thing we instinctively avoid, and see it not as an obstacle but as a crucible. It challenges us to confront our pain, our failures, and our despair, and to find in them the seeds of transformation. Through his time in the Siberian labor camp, Dostoevsky saw humanity at its lowest and highest. He witnessed acts of unspeakable cruelty, yet he also saw moments of profound compassion. He learned that suffering has the power to dehumanize, but it also has the potential to elevate. It can strip us of everything we thought we needed, leaving only the core of who we are, and that core, Dostoevsky believed, is where true redemption begins. But let's be clear, Dostoevsky does not romanticize suffering. He doesn't suggest that pain is good or desirable. What he offers instead is a way to make meaning from the inevitable hardships of life. He shows us that we have a choice. We can let suffering harden us, embitter us, turn us away from ourselves and others, or we can let it teach us, shape us, and guide us toward a deeper understanding of what it means to live. This philosophy is as radical today as it was in Dostoevsky's time. We live in a world that prizes comfort, efficiency, and the avoidance of pain, but perhaps we're losing something in that pursuit. Perhaps, as Dostoevsky suggests, it's through struggle that we truly come alive, because struggle reveals our capacity for resilience, our need for connection, and our potential for growth. So, the next time you find yourself in the midst of hardship, remember Dostoevsky. Remember that even in the darkest places, the spark of humanity endures. Remember that every trial holds the potential to teach you something profound about yourself. And remember that, as Dostoevsky said, to live without hope is to cease to live. If this video resonated with you, I encourage you to take these ideas further, whether by diving into Dostoevsky's works or by reflecting on your own experiences of growth through struggle. And if you found value in this journey, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Let's keep these conversations alive. Thank you for watching. And until next time, remember, every ending can be a beginning.